The fourth aliens had ruled the stars for so long that most of them had forgotten what fear felt like. They were an old species, older than many planets that now floated quietly in their empire's territory. Their ancestors had been hunters, moving through thick forests on their home planet, learning to read every scent and every sound. Over millions of years, that instinct turned into something far more complex, an entire culture built around being the strongest, the fastest, and the most intelligent life form in any corner of the galaxy. To them, the universe was simple. There were predators and there were prey, and they believed, without any doubt, that they were at the very top. The Empire stretched across hundreds of star systems. Their ships were sleek and precise, moving like shadows through space. Wherever they landed, they met little resistance. Most alien species they encountered were peaceful or unprepared. Some hid, some tried to negotiate, and some simply surrendered the moment they realized who had arrived. The fourth aliens took this as proof that the universe belonged to them. If other species existed, they were simply background characters in the fourth alien story. At the center of their homeland stood the Hall of Victories, a massive structure built from black stone pulled from an extinct moon. Inside, glowing symbols recorded every conquest the Vorthalians had ever achieved. Every young Vorthalian grew up visiting this hall, listening to stories of how their ancestors never once encountered a life form capable of challenging them. These stories became legends, then beliefs, and eventually the foundation of their pride. Among the younger generation, the idea that there could be a species out there stronger or smarter than them was almost amusing. It was something told in children's tales, usually as a warning to stay humble. But no adult actually believed it. After all, the Vorthalians had traveled farther than any known species. They had advanced technology that could read a planet's atmosphere from light years away. Their warriors trained from childhood, learning strategy, discipline, and the art of reading an opponent before a single move was made. In short, they saw themselves as perfect hunters. But even with all their intelligence and experience, there remained one thing they lacked: curiosity. Once they conquered a world and recorded it, they rarely returned. Once they labeled a species as harmless, they never studied it again. They moved through the galaxy with confidence, certain they already knew everything worth knowing. This confidence blinded them, far from their empire's heart. Away from polished cities and grand halls, the Vorthalian Scout Division carried out routine missions. Most of these scouts saw their work as boring. All they had to do was search nearby systems for new planets, scan for intelligent life, and gather samples. It had been centuries since a scout discovered anything surprising. On one such mission, a small scout ship drifted through a quiet region of space. The crew expected nothing unusual. They were half asleep, chatting lazily, checking their instruments out of habit rather than caution. That was when their sensors picked up something strange. Not a threat, not a weapon, but a signal. It wasn't like the calm, peaceful transmissions they usually intercepted from early civilizations. This one was loud, messy, full of emotion. It carried music, shouting, laughter, arguments, and voices speaking in hundreds of languages all at once. The crew stared at the readings, confused. How could one planet produce so many different kinds of sounds? Most species had one shared language, or two at most. But this was like listening to a market full of energetic children, all talking at once, and none willing to lower their volume. The scout ship tracked the signal to a small, blue planet orbiting a sun-like star. From afar, the world looked peaceful, wrapped in oceans and clouds. But the deeper the scans went, the stranger things became. The planet wasn't advanced enough to travel through space, yet its people had created thousands of systems for communication, transportation, and exploration. They built machines to fly across their sky, craft to explore their oceans, and technologies that changed their daily lives faster than most. Civilizations evolved in centuries. The Vorthalian crew didn't understand any of this. To them, this new species seemed chaotic. They fought among themselves, but also worked together when needed. They created art, music, stories, things the Vorthalians never valued. Instead of focusing only on survival or conquest, humans used their time to imagine worlds that didn't exist, to ask questions no one had answers to, and to dream of futures they might never live to see. The scout team recorded everything and sent the data back to their empire. They expected their leaders to be unimpressed. After all, many planets had life, many had cities, but very few had species advanced enough to develop complex communication before mastering space travel. Even so, the High Council reviewed the reports with mild curiosity. The information was strange, yes, but hardly threatening. Humans, as the reports called them, seemed unpredictable and emotional, but not dangerous. They had no interstellar weapons, no advanced ships, and no organized planetary defense that the Empire could detect. As far as the Council was concerned, Earth was just another primitive world, waiting to be studied or possibly annexed in the future. Still, there were a few things that made some Council members uneasy. Humans were not physically the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They couldn't breathe underwater or survive in extreme temperatures. Yet they had spread across their entire planet, adapting to deserts, snow, forests, and islands. Their ability to learn new things was unusually fast. Their survival rate in harsh environments was higher than the Council expected. And most strangely of all, their emotional range: fear, joy, anger, curiosity seemed to push them forward instead of holding them back. It was unlike anything the Vorthalians had seen, but the Council brushed aside these concerns. They believed humans would be easy to handle. After all, every new species behaved unpredictably at first, before being conquered or taught proper order. And humans, with their noisy signals and messy culture, seemed especially easy to overpower. The Vorthalian Empire cataloged Earth and moved on, confident that if they ever chose to visit the planet, the humans would react like every other species had, with fear. For the moment, Earth remained untouched and unknown to its soon-to-be visitors. People went about their daily lives, going to work, spending time with family, arguing over small things, celebrating small victories, dreaming of better futures. They had no idea that far above their skies, a powerful empire had already labeled them as potential prey, and the Vorthalians, sitting in their grand halls, had no idea that they were about to meet a species unlike any they had ever encountered. Because, while humans weren't the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, they carried something far more unpredictable inside them. Something that didn't show up on any scanner, any reading, or any report. A spirit that refused to break. For now, the Vorthalians believed they were the ultimate predators. But the universe was about to remind them of a truth older than any. Empire, sometimes the most unlikely species, can become the most extraordinary. And sometimes, the greatest hunter isn't the one with the sharpest claws, but the one with the wildest heart. When the first report about Earth reached the Vorthalian High Council, most members didn't pay much attention. The galaxy was full of small planets with developing life. Earth looked no different at first glance. A bright blue world with scattered continents and a lively atmosphere. But the deeper the scans went, the more unusual things the scouts found. And those unusual things slowly turned into curiosity. So the Council sent a second team. Not a full fleet, but an observation vessel, silent, fast, and built to blend with the darkness of space. The ship slipped past asteroids and drifting dust until the blue planet filled its view. The crew stared at Earth, the way someone might stare at a strange painting, uncertain where to look first. From above, everything seemed peaceful. Sunlight glowed on the oceans, clouds drifted lazily, and the planet rotated with the calmness of any other world. But the crew knew better. Their scanners buzzed nonstop, trying to keep up with the signals rushing out of Earth. Some signals were structured in clean music, news, lessons, movies. Others were chaotic shouting, laughter, random noises, conversations happening simultaneously in thousands of languages. The crew had never seen anything like it. They were used to discovering species that spoke maybe one or two languages, communicated slowly, and showed predictable patterns. But Earth was loud. Earth was emotional. Earth was full of life that refused to be quiet. Commander Zerlock, the leader of the observation team, leaned closer to the screen. His eyes followed the blinking lights that represented cities. There were thousands of them, each glowing like a star on the surface. People were everywhere walking, building, arguing, joking. The constant motion reminded him of a giant beehive, where every individual had their own task, yet somehow the entire structure stayed alive and organized. What kind of species creates this much activity on a single planet? He wondered aloud. One of the analysts turned toward him. A species trying to survive, the analyst said, and maybe trying to understand themselves. The idea sounded strange to the Vorthalians. They never questioned who they were. Their identity was clear, shaped by generations of victories. But humans were different. They explored their planet endlessly. They asked questions even when they knew the answers might never come. They created machines to fly, machines to dive, machines to talk to each other across the world. But even with all their inventions, they still argued, still struggled, still tried to understand their purpose. The Vorthalian crew found this confusing, but oddly fascinating. They spent days observing small groups of humans, a family eating together. Students walking to school, workers sitting in traffic, friends teasing each other on sidewalks. None of these moments were extraordinary, but they felt alive. They felt real. And for the first time in a long while, the Vorthalians saw a species that didn't move like prey trying to hide. Humans behaved like they belonged to the world. The crew reported their findings back to the High Council. But the Council mostly focused on the parts they understood. Earth had no space armies, no large-scale defenses, and no signs of advanced weapon technology. From a military point of view, the planet looked harmless. An easy target, still, Commander. Zerlock felt uneasy. He watched videos of humans testing rockets and building new inventions. Many of these experiments failed at first, but humans continued improving them. They kept trying even when the results were messy, sometimes dangerous. The Vorthalians, who prioritized perfection, found this behavior reckless. And yet, that recklessness seemed to push humans forward faster than expected. They don't wait for certainty, Zerlock said in a quiet meeting with his team. They move even when they don't know the outcome. That makes them unpredictable. His officers nodded, though they didn't fully understand why their commander felt bothered. From their perspective, unpredictability wasn't strength, it was weakness. A species that couldn't control its emotions or actions was easy to manipulate, but Zerlock wasn't convinced. One day, while studying the planet's cultures, the crew found something new. Humans didn't just survive, they created stories about survival. They imagined impossible worlds, wrote tales of heroes and explorers, drew pictures of creatures that didn't exist, and dreamed of traveling beyond their own planet. This shocked the Vorthalians more than anything else. Most species only imagined what they had already seen. But humans imagined things far beyond their reality. They dreamed of leaving Earth long before they even built proper ships. They wrote stories of outer space centuries before they understood it. Their imagination moved faster than their science. This kind of thinking didn't fit the Vorthalian worldview at all. Commander. Zyrolok watched a scene from a human movie where a small group of people discussed traveling to the stars. Their expressions glowed with excitement and determination. Even though it was fiction, it carried a feeling the Vorthalians didn't understand, a hunger for something bigger than survival. Humans, he realized, wanted more than safety. They wanted discovery, but the High Council wasn't interested in dreams or imagination. They studied the reports and came to a simple conclusion. Humanity was not a threat. Their technology was decades, maybe centuries behind. Their governments were divided. Their resources were scattered. To the Vorthalians, humans looked like a species that would either destroy themselves through conflict or eventually fall under the rule of a stronger empire. The Council decided Earth wasn't worth a full invasion yet, but it was worth monitoring. They assigned Zyrolok's team to continue observation and prepare a basic analysis for future contact. The next phase involved closer surveillance. The observation ship moved into a low orbit, closer than any alien craft had ever dared to approach. Earth. Humans had satellites, but none capable of detecting Vorthalian cloaking technology. From this distance, the crew could see cities in sharper detail. They saw lights turning on at sunrise, markets opening, cars filling the roads, and people rushing to their jobs. Despite living on a planet full of problems, humans kept moving forward. They complained, but they continued working. They worried, but they continued dreaming. They struggled, but they continued helping each other. This resilience surprised the crew. One night, they observed a small coastal town. A storm had been predicted, and heavy clouds gathered in the sky. Instead of panicking, humans prepared. They boarded up windows, helped their neighbors, rescued stray animals, and stocked food for emergencies. Even when the storm arrived, people communicated constantly, checking on each other through radios and messages. After the storm passed, they came together to repair damage and support those who lost the most. This unity stunned Zyrolok. On Vorthalia, natural disasters were rare, and when they occurred, individuals mostly looked after themselves. Watching. Humans support each other, so naturally felt unfamiliar. Almost alien. They stand up again after every hit, Zyrolok murmured. It's as if their spirit refuses to break. His officers exchanged glances. They didn't think humans were impressive. They were small, fragile creatures with short lifespans. But Zyrolok wasn't looking at their bodies. He was looking at their behavior, their resilience, their stubbornness. Their courage. After weeks of careful observation, Zyrolok prepared a confidential report, warning that humans were not as simple as they appeared. He wrote that human creativity, emotional depth, and unpredictability could lead them to rapid advancements. He warned that underestimating them could be dangerous in the distant future. The High Council dismissed his concerns. They sent a brief reply. Continue observation. Humans are to be classified as low-level species. No threat detected. Zyrolok closed the message and stared at the blue planet below. He didn't disagree with the Council's classification for the present moment, but he sensed something. The Council didn't. Humans were like a spark waiting to become a fire. They were loud, messy, emotional, and unpredictable. But they were also curious, brave, and endlessly adaptable. They had survived countless disasters. They had created complex societies. They had imagined futures they were not yet capable of building. No scanner could measure that. No report could capture it. But Zyrolok felt it growing, inch by inch, like a heartbeat echoing across the galaxy. For now, the Vorthalians watched Earth with quiet interest. But soon, interest would turn into fear, because the Empire believed they were the ultimate predators. They just didn't know that. Humanity, in all its chaos and imperfection, was about to challenge everything they believed. From high orbit, the Vorthalian observation team had watched humans for many weeks. At first, they saw Earth as just another interesting but harmless world. But the more they observed, the more questions came up. Humans were unlike any species the Empire had ever met: emotional, unpredictable, loud, creative, and full of contradictions. And now, it was time for the moment the Vorthalians believed would be simple. The first encounter, they expected fear. They expected panic. They expected chaos that would make humans crumble. They were about to be surprised. The Vorthalian ship slowly lowered its cloaking field. For the first time, a faint shimmer appeared in Earth's sky. It looked like a bright star moving in daylight. Something not normal, something impossible to ignore. At first, humans looked up thinking it was maybe a satellite or some kind of weather balloon. People took out their phones to record it. Some pointed, some argued, some gasped, but none of them panicked. Commander Zeralok watched the reactions closely. He expected humans to run, hide, or scream. Instead, the first thing humans did was live stream it. Some joked about it online. Others debated whether it was a prank. A few even argued if it meant aliens were friendly or if they came just to say hello. This confused the Vorthalians more than anything else. They were used to species that hid at the slightest sign of alien presence. They were used to terrified reactions. But humans reacted with curiosity. A bit of fear, yes, but nothing overwhelming. They talked about it like it was part of their daily routine. The ship moved lower, enough for radar systems around the world to detect it. Military bases scrambled jets. Scientists rushed to track the unknown object, and news channels started broadcasting live coverage. But even then, the tone was more urgent than terrified. Every country wanted to know what was happening, but no one lost control. Commander Zeralok raised an eyebrow. They prepare? Even when they don't understand? He whispered. Finally, the Vorthalian ship hovered above a large open field. On the outskirts of a city, crowds formed along the edges. People stood behind police lines, curious eyes glued to the sky. Some held cameras. Some held umbrellas. A few even brought snacks, like they were waiting for a show to start. The Vorthalians expected fright. They expected trembling. Instead, humans stood like spectators. "We should begin the message," one of the Vorthalians said. A long beam of light extended downward, forming a circle on the ground. A holographic image appeared, tall, glowing, and clearly not human. The image was supposed to intimidate any young species. It was designed to look powerful and otherworldly. Humans stared. Then someone in the crowd said loudly, "I knew aliens were real." Another person laughed. Another whispered, "Please, don't be hostile. We're not ready." Commander Zeralok watched the reactions with confusion. Why weren't they terrified? The hologram delivered a simple message. The Vorthalian Empire had arrived. They wanted peaceful inspection and expected cooperation. No threats. No warnings. Just an introduction. But then something unexpected happened. A human soldier walked forward, not aggressively, not fearfully, but calmly, as if approaching someone new at a gathering. He held a communication device, speaking into it while staring up at the hologram. He used slow gestures, clearly trying to show that he wasn't a danger to the Vorthalians. This was shocking. Most species froze when facing something unfamiliar. But this soldier showed controlled courage, not blind bravery, but responsibility. "He approaches without fear," one Vorthalian officer said. "He approaches with intention," Zeralok corrected. "Fear exists. They simply move through it." The meeting continued in short bursts. Humans tried to use simple phrases and gestures. They pointed to the sky, then pointed to the Vorthalian ship, then made signs for communication. The Vorthalians responded with their hologram, mimicking similar gestures. It was awkward, but strangely calm. The first encounter in Vorthalian history, it didn't start with either panic or surrender. Human scientists were soon brought to the field. They carried notebooks, instruments, translation devices, none of which could fully understand the alien language, but they tried anyway. They didn't hide behind soldiers. They came forward, eager to learn. Some of them smiled up at the hologram, like children meeting a new teacher. This deeply confused the Vorthalian team. How are they so comfortable? A technician asked. Zeralok didn't answer immediately. He observed the scientists closely. They didn't stay still. They pointed, measured, argued, tested small devices, and whispered ideas. They acted like the encounter was an opportunity, rather than a threat. They want knowledge more than safety, Zeralok finally said. That is rare. Meanwhile, humans around the world continued reacting in ways the Vorthalians didn't understand. Social media exploded, not with fear, but with memes, theories, jokes, and predictions. People asked if aliens had come for peace, for friendship, or to learn about Earth. Some wondered if their arrival would change science forever. A few people worried, of course, but the overall reaction remained strangely balanced. Zeralok studied human communication deeply. He saw how humans used humor to reduce anxiety, how they discussed problems openly, and how they created explanations, even when they didn't exist. It was messy, but it worked. Later that day, a Vorthalian ship extended a ramp toward the ground. This was the moment it would test everything. Most species fled when a ramp opened. But humans leaned closer instead. Soldiers stood ready, not aiming to attack, but prepared to defend if needed. Behind them, scientists whispered to each other with excitement. Civilians peered cautiously from beyond the safety barriers. Finally, the Vorthalian landing party stepped out. They didn't come with weapons. They didn't come with threats. They were simply here to observe. The humans gasped softly at their appearance, but no one ran. No one fainted. A few backed away, but most stayed still. The soldiers kept steady hands. The scientists stepped forward carefully. One scientist held a simple, white sheet with circles and lines drawn on it, an attempt at universal symbols. He showed it to the Vorthalians like a friendly offer. The symbols meant welcome, peace, and communication. The Vorthalian officers scanned the sheet quietly. No tricks. No hidden meaning. It was exactly what it looked like. A human attempt to say, "We want to understand you." Zeralok felt something he hadn't felt in centuries' uncertainty. For generations, the Vorthalians believed no species could match their intelligence or bravery. But here were humans, smaller, physically weaker, technologically behind, yet they acted with courage, curiosity, and caution all at once. They didn't behave like prey. They behaved like equals. Hours passed. As humans and Vorthalians exchanged gestures, symbols, and simple sounds, trying to find common ground. Every small breakthrough, the recognition of a word, a symbol, a shared idea, was celebrated by the humans. They clapped, smiled, or laughed softly each time progress was made. Their emotions flowed freely, and somehow, instead of making them appear weak, it made them stronger. It made the interaction warmer, more genuine. Zeralok noticed something else, too. Humans were observant. They watched every small movement the Vorthalians made. They studied their behavior, their expressions, their responses. They noticed things quickly, sometimes even before the Vorthalians expected them to. Humans weren't just reacting. They were learning fast. As the sun set, the first day of contact ended. The Vorthalians returned to their ship. The humans remained on the field, buzzing with excitement. Reporters talked endlessly. Scientists analyzed every detail. People across the world stayed awake, glued to their screens, discussing what this meant for humanity's future. Inside the ship, the Vorthalian team reviewed their data. Instead of filing the day as a simple first contact, they found themselves writing detailed notes on human behavior. They were confused, impressed, and slightly unsettled by how smoothly humans handled something so extraordinary. "They're not like any species we have met," one officer said. "They are unpredictable," another added. "That is dangerous." But Commander Zeralok shook his head. "It is not their unpredictability that concerns me," he said slowly. "It is their potential. They think fast. They adapt fast. And they face the unknown with courage instead of fear." The room went silent. He continued. "Today, they welcomed us. But what will happen when they understand us? When they grow? When they develop further?" The officers exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time in Vorthalian history, an empire that believed it was undefeatable had begun to feel something unfamiliar. Not fear, but doubt. And doubt, Zeralok knew, was the first crack in a predator's confidence. When night fell over Earth after the first encounter, humans stayed awake. Longer than usual. Streets that were normally quiet remained filled with people whispering, discussing, and wondering what would happen next. News channels replayed the alien arrival again and again. Scientists gave long interviews. People argued in cafes, living rooms, and online posts. Not half the world felt excited. The other half felt unsure. But everyone felt something big was happening. What? Humans didn't know was that high above. In the Vorthalian ship, tension had quietly started to grow. Commander Zeralok sat in the main control room, studying all the recordings from the encounter. He watched the humans again and again, how they stepped forward, how they communicated, how they stayed steady even in fear. Something about their behavior didn't match the Vorthalian expectations. It didn't match their training manuals. It didn't match the hundreds of species they had conquered. Before, humans acted strange, brave, curious, unpredictable. "It is possible we misjudged them," Zeralok said quietly. The officers around him exchanged uneasy looks. None dared to say it, but they had all been feeling the same thing. The situation did not look like a typical first contact. The humans didn't react like prey. Before they could discuss further, an alarm sounded. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the room. A human aircraft was approaching the ship. Not just one, several. Zeralok stood immediately. "Are they attacking?" "No weapons detected," the officer replied, checking the readings. Human aircraft seemed to be observing us. The Vorthalian crew stared at the screens. They expected fear, not this level of confidence. Humans were flying close, almost too close, circling the ship like curious birds. One pilot even tipped the aircraft slightly, as if offering a greeting. "Are they waving?" a technician asked, bewildered. Zeralok narrowed his eyes. "No, they are gathering information." The idea that humans were studying them so quickly made the room feel smaller. It was unsettling, almost disrespectful to the Vorthalian Empire. But humans didn't seem scared enough to hide their intentions. They wanted to learn. They wanted to understand. They wanted to challenge the unknown. Later that same night, the Vorthalian ship picked up something unexpected, a human signal trying to connect. It was a transmission, a simple message sent from a nearby human base. It didn't contain words the Vorthalians understood, but the tone was clear. Humans wanted communication. They were reaching out, trying to establish a channel. "Humans learned this fast?" an officer whispered. "Faster," another said. "They are adapting to us in hours." Zeralok approved an attempt to decode the message. His team worked for 2 hours, matching patterns, symbols, and rhythms. They managed to translate only a few basic concepts. Speak, Share information. Simple, but impressive. Humans weren't waiting. They weren't hiding. They were moving forward at a speed that didn't fit their technological level. Zeralock recorded these notes carefully. He wanted the High Council to understand the situation accurately, but not everyone in the Empire felt the same way. Far across the galaxy, news of the encounter reached the Vorthalian military command. Many high-ranking officers felt insulted. The humans were being treated as equals rather than a primitive species. Some argued that a display of dominance was necessary. Others believed the observation team was being too passive. Within hours, a decision was made without Zeralock's approval. A second Vorthalian ship, much larger and much more aggressive, was dispatched toward Earth. It would arrive in 2 days. Zeralock learned about this through a short message sent to his personal console. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a discussion. It was an order. He read it twice, and his expression darkened. The message meant only one thing. The Empire wanted to pressure the humans, push them, test them, see if they broke like every species before. He feared this was a mistake. But orders were orders. He didn't tell his crew, not yet. He didn't want panic. He didn't want reckless behavior. For now, the best thing was to continue observation and maintain calm. The next morning, the Vorthalian ship positioned itself slightly higher above the city. They expected humans to be restless, maybe even frightened. But when they scanned Earth's surface, they saw something that surprised them again. Humans were back to work. People returned to jobs. Children went to school. Traffic flowed through streets. Cafes opened. Markets buzzed. Scientists continued to try decoding alien frequencies. Soldiers kept their positions calmly, watching but not provoking. Even after meeting an alien species, humans carried on with daily life. Zeralock didn't understand this at first. Why weren't they overwhelmed? Why weren't they hiding? Then, he realized something. Humans didn't stop because something scared them. They adapted. They kept going. Fear didn't freeze them. It motivated them. He admired this quietly. Later that day, the Vorthalian ship lowered a small probe toward the ground, sending harmless waves to test human technology. Usually, species took days to analyze alien signals. Humans responded in 30 minutes. They sent back their own signal, rough, unrefined, but clearly attempting to match the alien frequency. Scientists at the field cheered when the probe reacted. They had made progress. Zeralock watched the scene closely. Through the ship's visual feed, human scientists laughed, high-fived each other, and showed victory signs. The energy was contagious, even from space. They celebrate small steps as if they are major achievements, a Vorthalian said. But these small steps happen fast, another replied. Zeralock nodded. That is what makes them dangerous. Hours later, something happened that truly changed everything. A small group of humans managed to slip past the outer security perimeter around the probe. They weren't soldiers. They weren't trained. They were just curious individuals who walked closer than the guidelines allowed. Human guards ran to stop them, but they were too late. One of the curious humans touched the probe. The device reacted, instantly locking onto the touch, scanning the person's biometrics, sending data back to the ship. Alarms blinked. Unauthorized contact detected. The Vorthalian crew rushed to their stations. But before they could react, the humans had already pulled the person back to safety. The guards didn't punish them. They simply scolded them and explained the risk, and the curious humans apologized. Embarrassed but unharmed, Zeralock stood silently watching. No species had ever approached alien technology so boldly. Most species stayed far away, afraid of the unknown. Humans walked straight toward it. He felt a chill run down his spine. Not fear realization. These creatures. He whispered. They do not wait for permission. His officers stared at him. They push forward. They take risks. And they learn from every mistake. Everyone in the room felt the same uneasy truth forming. Humans were not acting like prey. If anything, they were acting like young predators, hungry for understanding, hungry for advancement, hungry to grow beyond their limitations. Later that evening, the human government made another surprising move. Instead of relying on soldiers, they sent a team of social scientists, cultural experts, and psychologists to communicate with the Vorthalian hologram. They brought symbols, drawings, and emotional expressions. They weren't trying to challenge. The aliens, they were trying to understand who they were. Zeralok had never seen such an approach. Most species tried to negotiate power or request safety, but humans tried to build emotional bridges. They explained things with gestures and faces, expressing trust and caution at the same time. They seek connection, Zeralok said softly. Not dominance, not fear. Behind him, one of the younger officers spoke up. Commander, are we certain we want to continue this path with them? Zeralok didn't answer immediately. He couldn't, because he had just received the final message from command. The second ship arrives tomorrow. Prepare for full strategic testing, which meant pressure, which meant force, which meant pushing humans until something inside them snapped. But Zeralok felt a weight in his chest, a warning, a quiet voice telling him that provoking humans would not end the way the Empire expected, because somewhere, deep inside the species, lived a fire one that burned quietly but fiercely. A fire born from curiosity, emotion, struggle, and a desire to survive, no matter the odds. Humans could be calm. Humans could be friendly. But humans could also be unstoppable when pushed. The Vorthalians were about to learn that the hard way. The hunter was about to become the hunted, not through weapons or strength, but through the unpredictable power of the human spirit. And the next day would be the beginning of that shift. When news of the retreat spread across the stars, the Vorthalian Empire felt something it had not felt in thousands of years' uncertainty. Their whole society was built on a belief that they were born superior, born to dominate, born to stand above all other life. From the moment young Vorthalians learned to speak, they were told that every world in the galaxy was simply waiting to be conquered by them. They grew up hearing stories of easy victories, fast invasions, and frightened species begging for mercy. Those stories shaped their pride, their culture, and their idea of who they were. But now, a single planet had changed everything inside. The main Vorthalian council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. It was a huge room filled with glowing symbols, silver platforms, and tall pillars that reached up like ancient trees. The leaders usually stood tall and confident, but not today. They moved slowly, whispering to each other in worried tones. They had received reports from the fleet that had been sent to Earth, and those reports were nothing like their previous mission logs. The messages didn't talk about quick victories or terrified populations. Instead, they spoke about confusion, unexpected resistance, and humans doing things no logical species would risk. Some reports described humans working together with surprising speed. Others talked about humans willingly putting themselves in danger to protect strangers. And many spoke about something the Vorthalians had never seen before: humans using humor even in stressful moments. That confused the council the most. How could a species laugh during danger? How could they make jokes while facing an advanced alien empire? It didn't make sense to them, and that made humans even scarier. Among all the voices, the most important one belonged to Zeralok, the commander who had led the expedition. He had been respected throughout the Empire for his long list of victories, and his name was known on every Vorthalian world. But now, instead of celebrating him, the council stared at him with doubtful eyes. They expected him to offer a simple explanation for the failure, something they could fix. But Zeralock had no simple explanation for what he had seen. He told them that humans were unlike any species the Vorthalians had ever encountered. He explained that humans didn't follow predictable patterns. They didn't act like prey at all. Instead, they adapted quickly, learned fast, and reacted in ways that defied logic. They used creativity more than fear. They worked together in chaotic but effective ways. They improvised tools and plans on the spot. They were emotional, messy, stubborn, curious, and absolutely unpredictable. Zeralock had watched humans closely during the mission, and the more he observed, the more he realized how dangerous that unpredictability made them. Other species had strengths too, but they were easy to understand. They followed rules. They had limits. Humans, on the other hand, seemed to break every rule the Vorthalians had studied. They used fear to fuel courage. They used confusion to spark new ideas. And most surprising of all, they turned setbacks into motivation. The Council didn't like hearing this. Their entire identity was built on the belief that they were the ultimate hunters. Accepting that another species was stronger or even equally strong felt impossible to them. So instead of listening carefully, many of them rejected Zeralock's words. They said he was exaggerating. They said he had misjudged the humans. They said the fleet had simply been unlucky or unprepared. Some even whispered that maybe Zeralock had lost his edge with age, but Zeralock remained calm. He knew what he had seen, and he knew denying it would only lead to a much bigger disaster. He explained how humans had quickly learned how Vorthalian technology worked. He described how humans hacked systems within hours that other species couldn't understand. In years, he talked about how humans turned captured alien equipment into new tools. And he warned the Council that humans were already using that knowledge to get even stronger. Even with all his experience and all his respect, many Council members didn't want to hear the truth. Their pride was too deep. Admitting humans were a real threat felt like admitting the Vorthalian Empire had been built on a lie. A few Council members, however, felt uneasy. They remembered how the communication logs from the mission had been filled with frantic updates instead of confident reports. They remembered how their strongest ships had returned with damage they had never seen before. They remembered that, even with advanced weapons, their fleet had been forced to retreat from a planet that had not even discovered interstellar travel a few years earlier. That thought alone was enough to shake them. While the Council argued, messages from the edges of the Empire continued to arrive. Scouts reported humans building new devices, powered by alien energy cells. Other reports said humans had shared captured Vorthalian materials with their scientists, who immediately began analyzing everything. What shocked the Council even more was how fast humans moved. Their researchers didn't take months or years. They often made progress within days. The speed was unnatural, almost unbelievable. The humans were not using the alien technology for war alone. They were using it to improve communication, transportation, and everyday life. They saw the technology not only as weapons, but as opportunities. This was something the Vorthalians had never expected. Every other species they had encountered treated Vorthalian equipment with fear. Humans treated it like a puzzle to solve. The Council realized they were watching something, knew something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. And for the first time, they understood why Zeralock had been so serious. Humans were not just survivors. They were builders, thinkers, and explorers. They were extremely adaptable, and once they learned something, they improved it quickly. That made them more dangerous than any weapon. Still, instead of preparing for a peaceful meeting with Earth or seeking cooperation, the Council did something predictable. They tried to hide the truth from their citizens. They didn't want the Vorthalian population to panic, so they released a short statement claiming the mission had been delayed by unexpected natural conditions. But the truth couldn't stay hidden for long. Vorthalian communication networks were large, and information moved fast. Soon, pilots, technicians, and crew members who had survived the mission began whispering the truth. Those whispers spread across the Empire like wildfire. Ordinary Vorthalians reacted with disbelief at first. Many thought it was rumor. After all, how could a small blue planet stop their mighty fleet? But as survivors shared more details and independent operators confirmed strange activity around Earth, fear slowly grew. This fear wasn't about humans attacking them. It was about something deeper, the fear that their identity, the one they had grown up with, might be wrong. If humans could challenge them, what else could be out there? What if the galaxy was not as simple as they thought? What if their empire was weaker than they believed? While the citizens wrestled with those questions, the council decided to review Zyrolok's full report in private. The report was long, detailed, and filled with observations the council found uncomfortable. Zyrolok described humans as a chaotic apex species, a term that confused some leaders. They had always believed that apex species acted with precision, calculation, and control. Humans didn't fit that image at all. They were emotional. They made mistakes. They acted on instincts. But somehow, that made them even more effective in ways Vorthalians couldn't understand. The council debated for hours. But instead of preparing for cooperation or strategic peace, they decided to blame Zyrolok for the failure. They stripped him of his command, removed his authority, and silenced his warnings. They believed that by blaming him, they could protect the Empire's image. But deep inside, they knew blaming him changed nothing. What they didn't realize was that their attempt to hide the truth would only make things worse. Humans were moving quickly, and unlike the Vorthalians, they didn't waste time arguing over pride. They saw the galaxy as a place full of possibilities. They wanted to learn, explore, and grow. While the Vorthalian Empire argued with itself, humans were already preparing to take their next steps outward. They were building communication satellites based on alien designs. They were forming teams to study deep space travel. And they were beginning to understand that they were no longer alone in the universe. The silent fear growing inside the Vorthalian Empire became a quiet hope among humans. They didn't want to conquer anyone. They simply wanted to stand strong, and they had proven they could. And without realizing it, the galaxy was slowly shifting. The old belief that Vorthalians were the greatest hunters was fading. A new belief was rising, carried by stories of bravery, quick thinking, and resilience. People across different worlds started whispering one strange new sentence. The ultimate predators might be humans. The Vorthalian Empire had always believed that every story in the universe would end with them standing at the top. They believed that every species they met would fall in line, bow down, or run away. But after the mission to Earth failed, the Empire stood at a strange crossroads. One road was filled with pride and old beliefs. The other road was filled with questions they were afraid to answer. And in the middle of all this confusion stood Zyrolok, the former commander who had seen humans with his own eyes and understood how different they truly were not after being stripped of his command. He spent his days quietly observing the new reports arriving from distant outposts. He was no longer allowed to advise the council, but he kept reading everything he could. The council had removed him from power, but they couldn't take away his knowledge. Deep inside, he knew the truth would become clear sooner or later, no matter how hard the Empire tried to hide it. Meanwhile, on Earth, life had changed in ways people never expected. A few months earlier, the idea of aliens felt like something from movies and books. But now, people were living in a world where alien ships had entered their skies, and alien technology was scattered across research centers. In many cities, people gathered near screens to watch scientists give updates. There was excitement, curiosity, and a little fear, but mostly, there was a feeling that humanity had stepped into a new chapter. Scientists worked day and night, studying every piece of Vorthalian technology they had recovered. Some devices were far too complex to understand quickly, but others opened up in ways humans didn't expect. Engineers rebuilt damaged components, comparing them with human designs, and soon they created tools that combined ideas from two worlds. These tools weren't meant for war or destruction. They were meant to explore, communicate, and advance. The governments of Earth met regularly, but this time they weren't arguing about borders or politics. They were discussing space travel, alien communication, and the future of humanity in the universe. Surprisingly, instead of dividing people, the alien encounter began bringing them closer. It reminded everyone that Earth was one planet, and the universe was far bigger than any disagreement humans had with each other. But Earth wasn't the only place changing. Across the galaxy, the story of humans was spreading, not as a tale of danger, but as a tale of unexpected courage. Traders, travelers, and scouts carried whispers to distant worlds. They spoke about a species that acted without fear, that improvised solutions on the spot, that worked together in creative ways, and that refused to give up, no matter how strange the situation was. For species that had lived under Vorthalian pressure, this story felt like a breath of fresh air. Some felt hope for the first time in generations. If humans could stand up to the Vorthalians, maybe the galaxy was not destined to be ruled by one empire forever. On Vorthalia, however, the Council continued to argue. Some leaders wanted to prepare stronger fleets. Others wanted to reopen communication with Earth, hoping to learn what humans wanted. A few leaders secretly admired the human spirit and wondered if cooperation was possible. But most were controlled by fear and pride. They couldn't imagine sitting at the same table with a species they once saw as weak. Zyrolok watched all this quietly. He could see that the Empire was splitting into two sides, the ones who feared change and the ones who were willing to understand it. Every day he wished he could speak to the Council again, but he knew they would never let him. He was no longer a commander in their eyes. He was simply a reminder of their biggest mistake. One evening, while studying new reports, Zyrolok received a message from a young officer who had worked under him during the mission to Earth. The message was short but clear. Humans are preparing something. You need to see this. Attached to the message was a piece of intercepted communication showing humans testing a new space. Engine 1 built using both human and Vorthalian ideas. The new engine created a bright spiral of light, unlike anything humans had made before. It was stable, efficient, and incredibly powerful. It meant humans were no longer limited to their own solar system. They were ready to step into the galaxy. Zyrolok felt a mix of emotion: surprise, respect, and a strange feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not hope for Vorthalia's power, but hope for what the galaxy could become if humans entered it not as conquerors, but as explorers. Back on Earth, the first test flight of the new engine became one of the most watched events in human history. The pilot, trained in astronomy and engineering, slowly guided the small craft into space. People around the world held their breath as the countdown reached 0. The engine hummed, the craft glowed, and then, in a burst of light, it vanished, only to reappear kilometers away in seconds. The reaction across Earth was immediate. People cheered, laughed, and cried. They realized humanity had just taken its first step toward the stars. Reporters covered the event non-stop. Schools replayed the footage. Social media exploded with excitement. For the first time, humans didn't feel alone, and instead of fear, they felt strength. Humans didn't want revenge or dominance. They wanted to understand the universe and find their place in it. They wanted peaceful exploration.